What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice Colts podcast. So, we kind of made a video very similar to this one last week. We were talking about, the positions that we feel that the Colts should address in the offseason. This one's going to be kind of similar to that, but at the same time, we're kind of just going off of a little more emotion on this one and talking about what kind of positions the Colts might be lacking, specifically in regards to what we've been seeing around the NFL and what we think the Colts need to do. So, Colts Nation has been talking about it all over social media. We've seen it and we've been talking about it, and we watched the same games as you guys did. We watched this last week's football games. Absolutely entertaining. I mean, they were very, very fun to watch. I mean, would you agree, Cody? This might have been, in my opinion, might have been the most fun weekend of watching football that I have ever seen from any spot, just due to just how much drama there was amongst all of these games.
Yeah, it's like you watch one game and you think, oh, that's the best it's going to get. That was a really great football game. And then it just progressively got better as the weekend went on. It's one of those times, Derek, where I seriously stop and think, how do people not love the game of football? Like, I can't even begin to fathom that because it was such an exciting weekend of football. Like, I typically don't really care, if the Colts aren't in it. I don't really watch it, but there were some games I had to watch. Like, they were just so down to the wire, and they were back and forth. And then to end it the way that the weekend did, with that Bills-Chiefs game. I mean, yeah, it was just an exciting week of football. Honestly, in my memory, probably one of the best divisional round matchups in terms of the game slates and how the games turned out that I've ever seen, honestly, with how close and how tight each game was and how exciting, like you mentioned, all the drama that happened, all the back and forth. I mean, it was incredible, man.
It was
Incredible.
It was fun. Football rules, man. Football rules. Between those four games, the combined point differential was 15 points amongst those four games. I mean, think about that. You're right. Just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like every single one of those games had the chance to be a different outcome all the way down to the stretch, right? And, as we're watching this madness unfold as Colts fans. We're watching this all unfold. We're a lot of us thought at the same time, we're thinking, what do these teams have that are playing it this weekend that the Colts don't have, that the Colts could have been put in that position to begin with, right? And I think we'll talk about this one because everyone's talking about it. And it is the quarterback position, and we're going back to it again. We've been talking about it a bunch on this podcast over the last week, and we're going to continue to talk about it until the Colts name their starting quarterback for the 2022 season. We saw, we saw Joe Burrow, despite getting sacked 9 times against the Tennessee Titans, still found a way to win the game against the Tennessee Titans. You saw and then you ended up seeing, Jimmy G beating out Aaron Rodgers, right, in Green Bay and Lambeau Field, right? Then you saw Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady, 2 great quarterbacks. Matt Stafford going all out on the last play to Cooper Kupp, and you just saw just back and forth, back and forth. It almost made me feel like we were watching we were watching the Colts-Ravens game all over again, right? Where the Colts were just doing everything they could to not win that football game. It felt like that for the Rams. And then obviously the game of the weekend, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen just putting on clinics in that final game. And shout out to those two. They played fantastic football. It sucks that Josh Allen isn't going to get a chance to go further. I really thought this was going to be the year. But again, Patrick Mahomes just goes to show you what he is. Of course, Cody, we're not sitting here saying that the Colts need to find their Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is going to be a generational quarterback that very few will ever be like it. But, I'm sitting there, and I'm sure you are as well. I'm sitting there, and I'm saying to myself, man, like, the Colts need to find that answer at that spot if they're going to have a chance to compete against teams like the Rams, against teams like the Chiefs, against the Bills, things like that. I know we beat the Bills in the regular season, but again, that was one time. And I'm saying to myself, if that was the same Bills team, if we were going to face them in the playoffs the way they were playing there, the Colts aren't winning that football game because we just wouldn't be able to offensively match up with them. I mean, you got to think quarterback this weekend just went to show you again just how important that position really needs to be for the Colts this offseason.
It's the most important position in all of sports. I mean, I think you can clearly see that. You can get sacked 9 times and still have your stud quarterback go out there and win you the game. Like, it's the proof is there. You obviously want to have a good offensive line. You want to have a good defensive line. But the end all be all is the quarterback position, and there's really no debate about it. There shouldn't be any debate about it. The only outlier this divisional round was Jimmy G, but also because the San Francisco defense did a great job on Aaron Rodgers, in this Packers offense. But I think more often than not, you're right, Derek. You saw at the end of the game how many of these quarterbacks won the game for their team, right? Matthew Stafford, that throw to Cooper Kupp to end that game. You talk about Joe Burrow. You talk about Patrick Mahomes. 13 seconds left. He drives him down and wins him the game. Ties that game and wins him that game. 13 seconds, Derek. That's absolutely insane. But that just goes to show you, and even Josh Allen, the reason the Bills are in that game, Josh Allen was balling. So that goes to show you, I think, and there's a lot of Carson Wentz people out there, the Carson Wentz defenders, that for whatever reason, we've defended Carson Wentz before, but I think you almost have to be two things, either blind or ignorant, to not at least consider an upgrade at the quarterback position, or consider, that Carson Wentz needs to really have a lot of pressure on him this season, because, a lot of people like to make the argument, Derek, that he didn't have a lot of weapons, which I think is a valid argument. But I think where I'm kind of looking at is all right, you look at some of the tape, it's not like his receivers weren't getting open. He was just missing them near the end of the year. You know what I mean? And so it's so weird. He's so hot and cold. He goes out there with literally no offensive line and he wins you that Cardinal game. And then he just can't even complete a pass to save his life in the Jacksonville game. So, I mean, I think what they need from Carson Wentz. So say you stay with Carson Wentz, you need him to be the Carson Wentz he was really to start the season, to start that season. He was not the reason the Colts were losing. He was putting up pretty good stats. I think he was putting them in positions to win. And then it kind of seemed like they kind of, I don't know if they either just, loved what Jonathan Taylor was doing and kind of overcommitted there, or they lost faith in him. I mean, we'll see what happens. I think the proof will be in how the Colts handle this quarterback position this offseason. But, it was pretty obvious the quarterback position is the most important position in sports. And if you don't think that Carson Wentz is the guy, I'm all for giving Carson Wentz another year, but if you really are not sold on him being it, I think you got to push your chips in and you got to go get a guy. There are some guys that are going to become available potentially via trade, right? And I think you almost have to, if you're Jim Irsay, if you're Chris Ballard and you're watching that, you look at all the quarterbacks that were except for Jimmy G, all the other quarterbacks that were in these games were some of the top quarterbacks in the league. We would consider Joe Burrow, we would consider Josh Allen, we would consider Patrick Mahomes, so on and so forth. All these quarterbacks outside of Jimmy G, we would say are top quarterbacks in this league. So, I mean, you can have the best offensive line, you can have the best defensive line, but at the end of the day, we go back to that Super Bowl a couple years ago. The Niners had one of the best defensive lines in recent memory. With all the talent they had, end of the day, what won? It was the quarterback position. It is that important. And I think the Colts honestly have, and I'm glad that the Colts have not committed to Carson, because it's clear they understand that. It's clear that they're not okay with how Carson ended the year. You know what I mean? And so Carson has shown you flashes, though. I will say that. And I think you do need to get him some weapons for sure, or whoever your quarterback is. But your quarterback needs to be the guy that you're not questioning at the end of the year. Is he your guy? You need to know, is your quarterback the guy? Because look at the guys you're going to be facing for the next 10 plus years. You got to figure that out, Derek.
You're going to be facing Lamar Jackson. You're going to be facing Josh Allen. You're going to be facing Patrick Mahomes. for the next 10 years.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow. Yeah. I
You
mean,
know, fill in the blank. Like there's so many other quarterbacks too that you're going to be facing.
4 of probably the top 8 quarterback. You have 4 of the top 7 quarterbacks in the league probably in this conference. And and they're all young. They're all young. They ain't going anywhere. They're staying at their respective teams for a long time. And you're right. If regardless of whether or not, Carson's going to be the guy or not, you're going to have to get this guy weapons, whichever quarterback is going to be behind the center for the Indianapolis Colts in 2022. Because, I mean, look at what the Bengals just showed you this year. Look at what they just did. Burrow, despite having no offensive line whatsoever, he has 3 stud wide receivers and a good tight end and a good running back. What is that offense able to do, man? Look at what they were able to do, even despite the fact that he got sacked 9 times. I mean, again, it goes to show you the Colts offensive line. I mean, I could only imagine Joe Burrow trying to throw the football behind this Colts offensive line. That would be so unbelievably, that would be a cheat code for Joe Burrow. But, I mean, that's the thing I'm trying to tell people is, of course, you don't want to mess with the front line. Of course, you don't want to. But, of course, when you're talking about what Ballard is doing, which is paying all these guys big money, right? Well, you got quarterbacks that don't even have nearly as good of an offensive line as you, and they're getting more out of their quarterback than what you are. So it's like, again, it goes to show you, if you have to trade some of these guys or if you have to make tough decisions on salary, you have to start making those decisions, man. And we have to go into the next position here and debatable on whether I think you and I both agree that the quarterback position is the most important that the Colts are going to have to address this offseason, whether it's going to be sticking with Carson or going with someone else. But either way, we'll go into some of these other positions that I think are of importance. And that's getting weapons. That's getting weapons. I mean, regardless of who the quarterback is, like you said, the Colts have to get weapons. I mean, the weapons that this team has right now is just not very good. It's just not consistent. They're not very good outside of the running back position, right? We know Michael Pittman is turning into a potential number 1 wide receiver. He flashed before our eyes this last year. He played very well. But outside of that, who do you have? You don't have anyone. Right. You don't have anyone that has helped this offense transcend to another level outside of Michael Pittman and obviously the running backs. So, how important do you think it is that the Colts go and get some more offensive weapons for whatever quarterback they have?
It's extremely important, man. You got to set up your quarterback well. Like you talked about the Bengals, 3 pretty much would be almost number 1 receivers on any other roster, it seems like. They have 3 of those guys that they drafted in the first 2 rounds, so they obviously value that position. And, you look at the Chiefs, they have Hill, they have Kelsey, they have 2 really big studs there. The Bills, they have Stephon Diggs,
and Gabriel Davis. 4 touchdowns.
Dawson Knox. So that's something that you'll notice that the Colts don't have that a lot of these other teams do have that are, were made to the divisional round or are still in it, is they have a lot of weapons offensively. Like they are juggernauts on offense. They have a lot of guys that can, make it when it matters, when you have the game on the line. They have a lot of guys that can really make plays and win you football games. And so I think it just goes to show, man, quarterback obviously the most important, but you got to give the guy weapons. You got to give him weapons to fully know what you have at quarterback. And, if you give him weapons, you give him guys that, will make him better. Obviously franchise quarterbacks make weapons better, but if you can get some weapons that can make your quarterback better, I mean, it's just going to serve you so well, I guess, in the long run. And if you want to make a playoff push, when you need a big play, you need to make sure you have a guy, because teams are going to double Michael Pittman. I mean, down the stretch. Now they know what he is a little bit, kind of what they had when they had T.Y. Hilton, who was a stud for the Colts for years. They had no number 2. And so teams would just double team T.Y. Hilton. They would take him out of the game. And then Andrew Luck had nobody to throw the football to, and the Colts cannot make the same mistake twice.
Yep.
Like there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to potentially become available at the wide receiver and the tight end position. And if the Colts don't come away with at least a couple of those guys, man, I don't know what they're doing
Yeah.
anymore. You know what I mean? It's,
Yeah.
you can judge a quarterback all you want, but if you don't give him any weapons, that's your fault,
Look at what the
So, I
Rams
mean,
just did. Look at what the Rams
exactly.
just did. Instead of they lost Robert Woods, their clear number 2 guy in the middle of the season. What do? They go get OBJ. And look at what OBJ has been for them. He's been their clear number 2 wide receiver. Heck, I might even make the argument he's been just as good as Cooper Kupp over the last 4 weeks of the season than as anyone else in the league. I mean, Cooper Kupp obviously is insane. I mean, Cooper Kupp's the best wide receiver this season for any receiver in the league. But when you look at what OBJ has done for Matt Stafford and this group of guys, they just literally took Robert Woods, who was the clear number 2 guy, and they just replaced him. They replaced him for nothing. And that's OBJ, man. Like, come on. And I've heard people say that you need to draft one and you need to get one in free agency. I'm all for that. Colts, you can't just get one. It's not going to stop at one. You have to get multiples. I don't care if it's one at tight end, one at receiver. I don't care. But you have to go all in on that spot. You look at all the wide receivers. Matt Stafford, I just mentioned it. He has OBJ, he has Cooper Kupp, and he has Higbee to throw the football to. You look at the 49ers. They got Deebo Samuel. They got George Kittle. They got Ayuk. They have those boys that have speed and their agility.
In Tampa Bay, same thing.
Yeah,
They
Tampa
have
Bay,
Gronk.
same thing.
They have, they have Godwin. They have Mike Evans. They have other guys too, So, yeah, it's just like that is the big difference I'm noticing, Derek. Obviously, besides the quarterback position, that separates the Colts from these teams. These teams are supremely more talented at the skill positions than the Colts are. Like supremely, outside of running back, supremely more talented in all ways. The Rams, I would argue, Derek, and correct me if you disagree with this, the Rams have 4 wide receivers that are better than the Colts number one right now.
You want to
I think I
name
can
those
make that
4
argument.
for me?
I mean, they have Cooper Kupp, OBJ, they have Robert Woods, and then, I mean, Van Jefferson, maybe not.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Maybe, but I mean, I agree with you with 3. At least those 3 at least are better than the Colts number 1.
Which is insane to me. Like how? How does that happen? I don't know how we were so blind to say, oh, yeah, it'll be fine with a 30-some-year-old T.Y. Hilton and a bunch of other random dudes. I don't know how we looked at that and said that was fine, but we clearly didn't see it. And
you look at
wild.
the Chiefs. You look at the Chiefs and the Bills, right? And you look at the Bengals as well. I mean, honestly, outside of Tyreek and Travis Kelce, it's not like the receivers for Kansas City are that much better than any of our guys. But what do they have? One, they're speed guys. They are speed, and speed kills everywhere on the field if you have a quarterback that can throw you the football. Second, they stick around. They don't get hurt. That's the difference here. The Colts don't have those guys. They don't have guys that can burn you with 4.4 speed or lower and then be able to stay on the field. That's the problem, is we don't have guys like that. Kansas City does. The Bengals do. You're right. Tyler Boyd, who's their third receiver, could make the argument he's better than Michael Pittman. Could make the argument. Obviously, stat-wise, that's not the case. But of course, he's the third wide receiver in that offense. He's still got 700 or 800 yards receiving this year as a third wide receiver. Come on, man. Come on. That's crazy talk, man. And not to mention, they also have a tight end who's really freaking good. So, and he was on the free agent market too, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he will be this year or if it was last year. But either way, I mean. Again, it just goes to show you, you're right. This Colts skill position group outside of running back is just so outmatched between everybody else in the league.
Yeah. So I get why people are saying give Carson another year because he had nobody to throw the football to. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
We're appealing to the defenders there.
Right. The people that have commented mean things earlier are now they're talking our language now. So,
well, here's a position that I think is more important than weapons. Not saying weapons isn't important, but here's one that I think has been proven once again that Ballard has waited too long on this. So in the Rams game specifically, and in the Tennessee Titans and Bengals game specifically, in that game, in the Tennessee Titans Bengals game, do you know that there were 5 sacks in the first 4 drives of that game? 5 sacks. 5 in the first 4 drives of that game. And then obviously, when you look at the Rams, right? Who do they got? They got Aaron Donald, best defensive player in the league. You got Von Miller, who they signed in the before free agent or before the trade deadline. He came in. He's been a stud. They got Leonard Floyd in the offseason. Paid him a little bit of money, but he's still getting sacks. You know, you look at these teams, and then also, obviously the 49ers, they lost DeForest Buckner. They still got Nick Bosa, who's playing at a great level. They got Eric Armstead, who is a stud. You know, you look at some of these, and even the Bengals with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, those boys can still get some pressure. Those boys have been pretty decent this year. I mean, you're looking at these teams that have pass rush. And how did Brady lose? Oh, I know why. You get to the quarterback. You allow him to sit and pick you apart. He will do it without a moment's hesitation, and you will lose games. And it's one of the main reasons the Colts defense has been so bad at times this year, because when the chips are down and when you're in the lead and you're supposed to get these key stops and your defensive ends do not get pressure, then you're having an issue. It's why quarterbacks like Tom Brady and Lamar Jackson and other quarterbacks in the fourth quarter tore us apart late in games. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't think Kwity Paye and Dayo Odeyingbo can still be something. They definitely can be. And that's great if you draft a guy and then, 2-3 years down the line, they start to really show that they can be really good edge rushers. That's great. But you're playing the waiting game. And that was something that I said from the last offseason that I said was going to be a downfall this year for the Colts. It potentially could be, and it is. It's showing you they are nowhere near where they need them to be for this group to get going. And I think this is the second most important position that the Colts need to address this offseason, because if you do not sign a veteran, experienced, good defensive end this offseason, you will again have a bunch of young defensive ends who might get 6 or 7 sacks that don't result in anything that provides you more experience and depth at that position while you wait for Kwity Paye and Dayo to potentially improve.
Yeah. I mean, how long are we going to sit back and wait and hope that these guys are going to develop? There's no guarantee they're going to. Now, I think they have a really good shot to, like you mentioned, but it's time to stop with these projects. It's time to stop expecting these rookies to come out and play, 10 sack seasons. You got to address it, and that's why we were so disgusted that you let Danico Autry walk.
Yes, 2 sacks in the first half.
Yeah,
2 sacks in the first half. He had how many sacks on the year? What was it, like over like a dozen? He had like near a dozen or something. Like Danico Autry, again, everyone keeps saying, oh, Danico Autry was going to take time away from the young guys. What young guy is going to get you 12 sacks? Which one? You didn't even have to take time away from Kwity Paye. You drafted Kwity Paye to be one of your end guys. You have Autry on the other side. And then Dayo Odeyingbo, he doesn't play the whole season. Dayo didn't even play until over halfway into the season anyway. And so what if Danico Autry is taking time away from Kamoko Toure, Al-Quadin Muhammad, Isaac Rochelle? They didn't even combine for as many sacks, all 3 of them, as Danico Autry had this year. Like, think of how demented that is. Having Danico Autry on this defensive line this year would have immediately made this Colts defensive line better and defense better. It would have. It was a big blunder by Ballard. That was one of the biggest ones that I said was going to hurt. I was pissed when it happened. I'm pissed that Ballard let him walk. And he went and showed you, even though they lost, he was one of the best dudes on that defensive line all year. Yeah, and Danico Autry had freaking 10 sacks this year. I mean, just think about that. 10 sacks. I mean, I don't even think there was a defensive lineman for the Colts that got anywhere above 8.
Let me check on that. But I think you're right, unfortunately. Let me pull up the player stats here so I don't tell you wrong here. Yeah, as far as sacks go, oh boy, you're going to love this, Derek.
Okay.
Okay, so DeForest Buckner was your leading sacker. Take a guess at the most sacks by a defensive end for the Colts, and who do you think it was?
By a defensive end?
Yes.
Al-Quadin Muhammad at 5.
Nope, he had 6. So
6, okay.
But he's your leading guy. He wasn't even supposed to be a starter, man.
Yeah, Al-Quadin was supposed to be a backup for you, and he was he was the guy you signed for $3 million this offseason to be brought back.
$3 million.
I guarantee, didn't he get he got 2 of them in the Texans game too, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of those were kind of coverage sacks too. So it's not like he's the guy going out there and, making something happen. So, and Kwity Paye had 4 the whole year.
Yeah, I told Colts fans that don't be surprised if he gets 6 or less.
Right. It's unfair to expect him to get.
Yeah, it was unfair to expect him to be that way. And I just, again, going back to it, it's just so dumb that Ballard just let all these experienced guys walk. And you just say, well, we're just going to go with our young guys. That'd be different if you had the rest of your roster figured out to where you thought, or if you were a bad team which the Colts are not, and you just said, okay, well, we're just going to figure these guys out. We're just going to see what they got.
Yeah.
It would be a different scenario. I'm going to say this, Cody, and I'm going to say it now, and I'm going to speak it into existence. If the Colts do not sign Hassan Reddick to their roster, by the time free agency's done, I'm done. I have no trust in Ballard at any point with the defensive end groups. Nothing. None. And I'll tell you what. I'll tell you one thing. If you don't want to go with you don't want to change your quarterback, if you don't want to do anything with that, that's fine. I got one blockbuster move you can make that makes this defense immediately better. You want to know what player that is? Chandler freaking Jones. Chandler Jones is going to be a free agent this offseason. Again, Chandler Jones, one of the premier defensive ends in the league right now. Dude always gets double-digit sacks every year. I mean, he's in contention a lot of times to be the potential sack leader for years and years. I mean, I think it would be, again, if you don't want to spend your money on a quarterback or a couple other things, go spend your freaking money on a big-name defensive end like that. Yep. And watch this defense get immediately better.
Yep. And, you've struck out multiple times at defensive end in terms of drafting a guy. You don't have a first-round pick this year. So if you just run it back with these guys, you're an idiot. You
can't run it back with this same group.
You can't. You just can't. It would just be almost borderline negligent, to not address it in some way. Because you talked about there's a couple guys that are proven guys. Ballard, you can fix your mistake of letting Danico Autry go. Bring in a veteran guy. Now you have a veteran guy and you have Kwity Paye, who you like a lot. He had a solid rookie season, has obviously things to improve on. But you need an alpha, man. You need an alpha now. You need a guy that can get to the passer. How many years have we been saying this, Derek? I'm sick and tired of waiting and hoping on guys. You got to make it happen.
Especially at that position. Yeah. I don't know how many years it's been. I mean, since Robert Mathis had that 19 and a half sack season,
yep,
we haven't had a consistent guy. I mean, Eric Walden got 11 that 1 year. But that 1 year he was good, and then we let him walk, and then he ended up being a nobody afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the best edge rusher we've had since 2017. I mean,
That's sad.
It's bad. It's
That's sad.
bad.
And Eric Walden was not a good player. I mean, let's just call
No,
it
he
what it is.
wasn't. He really wasn't that good. No.
So that tells you the lack of success we've had at defensive end. Danico Autry might honestly be in contention for the best defensive end the Colts have had in the last 5-10 years. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly,
at least the last 5 for sure.
Yeah, 5 years, I guess, because math. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it is that important. It's important to have a great quarterback. That's the most important. But if you can affect the quarterback, I mean, the fact that the Bills were not able to do that, I mean, it showed. When Patrick Mahomes had time, he could drive him down in 13 freaking seconds.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And look back to the Super Bowl last year. I mean, granted, Mahomes didn't have both of his tackles, but again, what happened when Mahomes was getting pressured by 4? I mean, they had such good edge rush and such good pass rush. They could bring 4 guys and still keep 7 back, and they were consistently getting pressure on Patrick Mahomes. That is what you need. I mean, again, credit to the freaking Titans. I can't believe I'm saying it, but their defensive line, I mean, they bought their defensive line for the most part, and my gosh, it was really good this year. I mean, it was actually really, really good this year, and I'm quite surprised.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to do that, man. Like, I know Balor's not a guy that loves to go out and spend a ton of money, but like at some point, what gives, man? Like, if you're just gonna sit on that money and you're not gonna go get and invest, it's gonna be a little bit of a risk. That's okay. At least we know you're trying, man. Like, and I think as fans, that's what we want to see. We want to know that you actually want to build a winner here. You know what I mean? And you show us that by going and investing where it matters.
Yeah, and the positions where it matters.
Yep.
You're right. I mean, the Ballard has done a great job of setting a foundation where it's at. That's great. We're glad that you have, but now it is time to start addressing the positions that really matter, the ones that really set your team apart from everyone else, right? And that's the big thing. And people keep talking about the cap situation. Look, there are 3 or 4 moves that the Colts can make this offseason that will almost double their cap space, almost double it. So there's no excuse. There isn't. If you got the culture that you say you have, then let's make some moves happen here. And I'm going to just do this move just for shits and giggles here because I think it's pretty funny because I've seen people talk about it on the internet for quite a bit today. I think it's important that the Colts get this one specific position right, and I think they need to figure it out. And it's the freaking kicker. It's the freaking kicker. Again, say what you want to say. 3 out of these 4 games this past weekend were decided by a kicker being able to make a field goal from whatever distance. And look, dude, for the first time in my life, I saw an NFL kicker, okay? I saw an NFL kicker short a kick from under 50 yards. That's the first time I think I've ever seen that. I mean, the Rams kicker, now let's be honest, he made the game winner, so I can't trash him, even though he kicked it from the 20. So it's not like that's a chip shot. Yeah. But even then, like he shorted a 47-yarder, bro. Like I was making fun of people. I was like, even Hot Rod could nail that. And we talk all the time about how he has no leg, even though I don't really think that's true because I've seen him make a 53-yarder against Green Bay. But, I mean, yeah, I think it's one of those things where we've been talking about, like, as Colts fans, we've kind of had fun at poking at who's going to be the starting kicker for the Colts going forward. But I think they need to figure that thing out. They really do. I mean, as much as guys like Zach Hicks will tell you that they absolutely despise kickers and the fact that, special teams should not decide games anymore. It is a big part of today's NFL world. And this weekend just showed you that. Special teams won almost every game this week, and it's important. So to have a kicker that can nail something up 50 yards plus and nail it practically every time, I think is a severely underrated position that people need to start taking more seriously.
Yeah, and just like the quarterback, the kicker is in question again. Like you need to stop having flux at the same position off season after off season. So yeah, I mean, I think you gotta figure it out, man. And you gotta stick with the guy. I mean, you figured out your punter, you figured out your returners. Like, why can't you figure out kicker?
Yeah.
It's important. It's important as much as people want to deny it. Having a good kicker. I mean, Adam Vinatieri. Think of the Colts Super Bowl run. Adam Vinatieri. It's a game where he had to kick 5 field goals in hostile territory. He hit all 5, and the
Yep.
Colts won. Sometimes you got to win those games, those tough games, and you got to make sure your kicker can do it, as
Yep.
opposed to what happened in Baltimore this year when Hot Rod completely, I know he was injured, but he misses key points and you lose that game in overtime.
Yep.
Like, that is the difference in being a 9-win football team versus being a 10, 11, 12, 13 plus win football team. Those little things, they matter, man. They matter. Special teams matters.
Yep. And, the special teams really hurt us in a bunch of games this year, and especially in that Ravens game. We make that field goal that Carson Wentz put us in great position with 40 seconds left against that Ravens defense and moved us all the way down the field to get that last kick. And it just doesn't go in. We'd be talking about Carson Wentz and how amazing he was in that game versus Lamar Jackson. But any other positions that you can think of that we need to address, or did we pretty much hit all of them?
I mean, I think like those were probably the big four that you have a lot of question marks on. And I would say maybe corner might be one that you could argue because I mean you have your 3 guys that you feel really good at, but you need depth at corner. I think you need to sign an outside vet free agent if you're probably going to like let Xavier Rhodes walk. I'm assuming that's what the Colts are going to do. You got to probably get just another veteran guy in there that you feel confident can step in. Maybe not necessarily as a starter, but if you need a guy that can fill in when needed, I think you need a guy that you can maybe invest in, and who knows, maybe you go and get it in the draft or something like that, maybe like a 3rd, 4th rounder or something like that. But I think corner might be a position you just need to add to a little bit. I don't know if we mentioned left tackle, but I think it's very important as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the offensive line. I mean, I again think that, for a left tackle's sake, as bad as Eric Fisher was, if you were to bring him back on a veterans minimum deal, a team friendly kind of deal, even then, I still think the alternative to drafting one early is still relatively good. Um, I might get a lot of flack for saying that. I don't really care. Either way, I mean, the rest of this offensive line, I mean, we give a lot of crap to Eric Fisher, which he deserves, but at the same time, I mean, I can't even feel bad about my offensive line seeing what I just saw Joe Burrow have to go through Saturday night. I can't even feel bad. I can't feel bad. I can't feel bad for Carson Wentz or whatever quarterback that we get for the future. Because I just saw what Joe Burrow just had to deal with. And I'm just sitting here saying, my God, how thankful I am for my offensive line versus that one.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm going to make this argument now. The Eric Fisher lost you games. Like he killed momentum in key moments. The one that sticks out the most to me is that Tampa Bay game. You're driving down. You're probably going to go score again. Eric Fisher completely whiffs. Carson Wentz gets strip sack, and that completely changes how that game flows. So you just need. You don't need a superstar there. You just need a competent left tackle that played a lot better than what Eric Fisher played last year. You just need somebody who's an upgrade from Eric Fisher, which isn't very hard to do. I personally am not bringing him back. I'm not touching that with a 30-foot pole. But yeah, I think you need to probably just sign a vet or something. You kind of, unfortunately, you might have to band-aid it a little bit, and that's what Ballard kind of talked about. So if we have to do a short-term fix, we'll do that, because with the lack of a first-round pick, and I don't know if you trust a 2nd-round pick potentially, unless the guy falls, like it has an exponential fall. I don't know if you really trust, a rookie at left tackle. Maybe you sign a vet, maybe you draft one. I don't know what the solution is there, but
Right.
I don't think you invest as much as maybe some people think in left tackle this offseason, because I think you can maybe get by for one more year while you address these positions that you simply cannot ignore anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. 100% agree with you. All right, well, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Let us know your thoughts in the comments on positions that the Colts are lacking. Where do you rank them amongst them? And what do you believe that the Colts should do in regards to those? Thank you guys again so much for the continued support. Hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, go Colts.